Hi, everybody. This is Robert Harley. Welcome to our online book club, the Mission Success Online Book Club. And today we're going to continue with our book that we're reading, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. And we're going to continue with chapter 4. Last week we did chapter 3, so this week we're going to go on to chapter 4. So I hope everybody have their book ready and they're ready to follow along with me. If not, I'll try to read carefully and go slowly so you can follow along. This is an awesome book. I recommend this book by anyone, to read by anyone. This is the book that inspired the movie The Secret. This is the movie that Rhonda Berg, the author of the book The Secret, and the movie The Secret. This is the book that inspired her to down the journey of discovering about the law of attraction and all that. This is the book that kind of started off for her, and so we're gonna read this. This is the book also. It's over 100 years old. I think it was written in 1906. So it's over 100 years old, this book, but it's still relevant for today. It still have a lot of stuff in it that we can apply to our lives even today. So just one of those, things don't go to style. They don't ever lose relevancy. Even if they were written 100 years ago, or even 1,000 years ago, even thousands of years ago, they're still relevant for today. Because you know why? Because we are all humans. We're humans today as we were humans a few thousand years ago. So we're still dealing with the same type of thing. So anyways, with that said, let's just start with the Science of Getting Rich, chapter 4. Now this chapter is called The First Principle in the Science of Getting Rich. So we're going to discover the first principle. Thoughts is the only power which can produce tangible riches from the formless substance. The stuff from which all things are made is a substance which thinks, and a thought of form in this substance produces the form. Original substance move according to its thoughts. Every form and process you see in nature is the visible expression of a thought in original substance. As the formless stuff thinks of a form, it takes that form. As it thinks of a motion, it makes that motion. That is a phone call coming in. I guess that's what you get when you do your live on your phone. People don't know you do this. Sorry about that. That's an interruption on my phone. I just got a phone call. Where was I? Let me start over from that paragraph. Original substance move according to its thoughts. Every thought, every form and process you see in nature is the visible expression of a thought in original substance. As the formless stuff thinks of a form, it takes that form. As it thinks of a motion, it makes that motion. That is the way all things were created. We live in a thought world, which is part of a thought universe. The thought of a moving universe extended throughout formless substance, and the thinking stuff moving according to that thought took the form of system of planets and maintained that form. Thinking substance takes the form of its thought and moves according to the thought, holding the idea of a circling system of suns and worlds. It takes the form of these bodies and moves them as it thinks. Thinking the form of a slow growing oak tree, it moves accordingly and produces the tree. Though centuries may be required to do the work in creating In creating, the formless seems to move according to the lines of motion it has established. The thought of an oak tree does not cause the instant formation of a full grown tree, but it does start in motion the forces which will produce the tree, a long established line of growth. This Every thought of form held in thinking substance causes the creation of the form, but always as at least generally, sorry, along lines of growth and action already established. The thought of a house of a certain construction, if were impressed upon formless substance, might not cause the instant formation of the house, but it would cause the turning of creative energies already working in trade and commerce into such channels as to result in the speedy building of the house. And if there were no existing channels through which the creative energy could work, then the house would be formed directly from primal substance without waiting for the slow processes of the organic and inorganic world. No thought of form can be impressed upon original substance without causing the creation of the form. Man is a thinking center and can originate thought. All the form that man fashions with his hands must first exist in his thought. He cannot shape a thing unless he has thought that thing. And so far man has confined his effort wholly to the work of his hands. He has applied manual labor to the world of forms, seeking to change or modify those already existing. He has never thought to try to cause the creation of new forms by impressing his thought upon formless substance. When man has a thought force, he takes material from the forms of nature and makes an image of the form which is in his mind. He has so far made little or no effort to cooperate with the formless intelligence to work with the Father, as he has not dreamed that he can do what he seeth the Father doing. Man reshapes and modifies existing forms by manual labor. He has given no attention to the question whether he may not produce things from formless substance by communicating his thoughts to it. We propose to prove that he can do so, to prove that any man or woman may do so, and to show how, as our first step, we must lay down three fundamental propositions. First, we assert that there is one original formless stuff or substance from which all things are made. All the seemingly many elements are but different presentation of one element. All the many forms found in organic and inorganic nature are but different shapes made from the same stuff. And this stuff is thinking stuff. A thought held in it produces the form of the thought. Thought and thinking substance producing shapes. Man is a thinking center, capable of original thought. If man can communicate his thought to the original thinking substance, he can cause the creation, or formation of the thing he thinks about. To summarize this, there is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which in its original state permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. A thought in this substance produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. Man can form things in his thought, and by impressing his thoughts upon formless substance, can cause the thing he thinks about to be created. Reasoning, created. It may be asked if I can prove these statements, and without going into details, I answer that I can do so, both by logic and experience. Reasoning back from the phenomena of form and thought, I come to one original thinking substance, and reasoning forward from this thinking and substance, I come to man's power to cause the formation of the thing he thinks about. And by experiment, I find the reasoning true, and this is my strongest proof. If one man who reads this book gets rich by doing what it tells him to do, that is evidence in support of my claim. But if every man who does what it tells him to do get rich, then that is positive proof until someone goes through the process and fails. The theory is true until the process fails, and this process will not fail. For every man who does exactly what this book tells him to do will get rich. I have said that men get rich by doing things in a certain way. And in order to do so, man must become able to think in a certain way. A man's way of doing things is the direct result of the way he thinks about things. To do things in a way you want to do them, you will have to acquire the ability to think the way you want to think. This is the first step towards getting rich. To think what you want to think is to think truth, regardless of appearance. Every man has the natural and inherent power to think what he wants to think, but it requires far more effort to do so than it does to think the thoughts which are suggested by appearances. To think according to appearance is easy. To think truth regardless of appearances is laborious, and requires the expenditure of more power than any other work man is called upon to perform. There is no labor from which most people shrink as to do from that of sustained and consecutive thoughts. It is the hardest work in the world. This is especially true when truth is contrary to appearances. Every appearance in the visible world tends to produce a corresponding form in the mind which observes it, and this can only be prevented by holding the thought of the truth. To look upon the appearance of disease will produce the form of disease in your own mind and ultimately in your body, unless you hold the thought of the truth, which is that there is no disease. It is only an appearance, and the reality is health. To look upon the appearance of poverty will produce corresponding forms in your own mind unless you hold to the truth that there is no poverty, there is only abundance. To think health when surrounded by the appearance of disease, or to think riches when in the midst of appearances of poverty, requires power. But he who requires this power becomes a mastermind. He can conquer fate. He can have what he wants. This power can only be acquired by getting hold of the basic fact which is behind all appearances, and that fact is that there is one thinking substance from which and by which all things are made. Then we must grasp the truth that every thought held in this substance becomes a form, and that man can so impress his thoughts upon it as to cause them to take form and become visible things. When we realize this, we lose all doubt and fear, for we know that we can create what we want to create. We can get what we want to have. We can become what we want to be. As a first step towards getting rich, you must believe the three fundamental statements given previously in this chapter. And in order to emphasize them, I repeat them here. There is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which in its original state permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. A thought in this substance produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. Man can form things in his thought, and by impressing his thoughts upon formless substance, he can cause the thing he thinks about to be created. You must lay aside all other concept of the universe that this monistic... Okay, sorry, I'll read that over again. Sorry, guys. You must lay aside all other concept of the universe than this monistic one, and you must dwell upon this until it is fixed in your mind and has become your habitual thought. Read these creed statement over and over again. Fix every word upon your memory and meditate upon them until you firmly believe what they say. If a thought come to you, cast it aside as a sin. Do not listen to arguments against this idea. Do not go to churches or lectures where a contrary concept of things is taught or preached. Do not read magazines or books which teach a different idea. If you get mixed up in your faith, all your effort will be in vain. Do not ask why these things are true, nor speculate as to how they can be true. Simply takes them as truth, untrust. The science of getting rich begins with this absolute acceptance of this faith. Wow, that was this book is so. This chapter in particular is so deep. It's such a deep. It's so much in this chapter here that it's and it's some in some ways it's kind of you have to kind of take it apart slowly and just dissect it in different stages, because it's so much that you have to so much of it you have to kind of grasp for yourself, kind of understand. You kind of read it and say, okay, let me try to understand what he's saying here. Let me try to put it in my own words to see if I can understand what he's trying to say. And you have to kind of dissect it like that, kind of read like a word or a sentence or maybe a whole paragraph, and then stop there and think about what you just read before you can go on to the next sentence or to go on to the next paragraph. So if you can fully grasp what he's saying, because there's so much in here. There's such in depth that you can go into to think of what he's saying, what he's trying to say. But in overall, because again, for lack of time and lack of I don't want to go to read the whole chapter over again. But what he's trying to say, that the overall overview of the chapter, he's saying that everything comes from one source. Everything in all of creation, everything you look at, everything that they can see, everything they can touch and feel, everything comes from one original source. And that source is, he's trying to say, is a formless substance, original substance, comes from all one source, and we're all part of that one source. Even man came from this one source, this one original source of all things, all creation. So he's saying, if you can grasp that reality, that do anything, you must realize this, you must grasp this truth that everything comes from one original source. Remember what he says, that he says here, he says, uh back here, says, as a first step towards getting rich, you must believe three fundamental statements given previously in this chapter, and in order to emphasize them, I repeat them here. There is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which in its original state permeates, penetrates, and fills the inner spaces of the universe. So you say here to, yet this is one of the first concept you must grab a hold of and believe, and kind of realize that this is true, that everything comes from one original source. Everything in all creation, including man himself, came from an original source. Now, I don't know if you want to call that original source, but those of us who are Christian, we call this original source God. We believe God is a creation of all stuff, but the original stuff, that there's all everything in creation come from this one original source, and it's everywhere. It penetrates, penetrates, and fill everything in all creation, all around us. The second thing we have to grasp and believe and think about is man can form things in his thoughts, and by impressing his thoughts upon formless substance, he can cause the thing he thinks about to be created. So I like when he was saying that back here, when he was saying that man has the ability. See, so far he said man has been creating stuff with our hands. We've been creating things. We create everything we see. We've been creating things with our hands. But he's saying that man hasn't come to the understanding yet that he can actually create things with just his thoughts. Just by thoughts, a person just by thinking about it, you can actually create things. That's kind of that's kind of beyond. We think that's beyond our capability. But what he's trying to say, that no, it's not beyond our capability to actually create things by just thoughts, by our thoughts. So far, we've been using our hands to create things, but he's saying no. He's saying that we haven't grasped the concept yet that we can actually create things by just impressing our thoughts upon these things and creating things with just our thoughts. So that's what he's trying to say. Man can form things in his thoughts, and by impressing his thoughts upon formless substance, this formless substance, the source of all things, the source of all creation, this formless substance that permeates, penetrates, and fills in the spaces of all things. If man can somehow understand how to use this by just his thoughts, use his thoughts in alongside with this formless substance, he can create anything he wants. He can create anything he wants. A thought in this substance produces the thing which is imaged by the thought. So this is a second concept. A thought in this substance produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. So a thought in this, so just say, again, I like the fact that he used two things that they really anybody can relate to. One is the health, and one is poverty or getting rich or finances. Everybody can relate to being about their health, and anybody can relate about their finances. So he uses those two things as an example. He said, "There is no labor from which most people shrink as do from that of sustained and consecutive thoughts. It is the hardest work in the world. This is especially true when truth is contrary to appearances." Now he's saying what he's saying here is that we have let our appearances of things around us dominate our control or influence our thoughts, our thinking, what we think about. For example, if you have an empty wallet, you think that you're broke and you have no money, right? And you make those kind of thoughts, your lack of money and stuff like that. If you have an empty bank account, you're thinking thoughts of poverty and lack. If you have some kind of sickness or disease on your body, then you're letting that sickness or disease on your body influence your thoughts, because that's what you're thinking, sickness and disease. And he's saying that your appearances are influence your thoughts to think but you have to think contrary of appearances. This is especially true when it comes to truth is contrary to appearances. Every appearance in the visible world tends to produce a corresponding form in the mind which observes it, and this can only be prevented by holding the thought of the truth. To look upon the appearance of disease will produce the form of disease in your own mind and ultimately in your body, unless you hold the thought of the truth, which is there is no disease, it is only an appearance, and the reality is health. And so you see, he's trying to say that our thoughts are constantly being influenced or dominated by our appearances. Do we let these appearances around us influence our thoughts? And then we think about these things, it becomes more reality. It's like a cycle we find ourselves in. We think about sicknesses and disease, therefore sicknesses and disease comes on our body. Therefore, the appearance of sicknesses and disease influence our thinking, which is and then bring what we're thinking into reality, and then the appearances and so you see, it's go back and forth like that. And he's trying to say to stop the secret to stop thinking in that cycle, this death cycle, is to think that the truth that there is no sicknesses and disease, there's only health.